Hey guys, real quick, before I get into the video, I wanted to announce the 5 winners from my giveaway of digital copies of Skyward Sword HD. Their names will be present on the screen in 3, 2, 1. Ta-da! Congratulations, you guys. I'll be hitting your DMs up on Twitter later on today, so please stay tuned for a message from me. And now, on to the video. 3 words, guys. Skyward Sword HD. Well, I guess 4 if you say high definition. Let me just say real quick that I have never been more happy to be wrong. Seriously, last year I made the mistake of attempting to predict that Skyward Sword would never be ported to the Switch for some technical jargon reasons, but lo and behold, Nintendo just slapped my logic out the window and down the street because boom, July 16th. Skyward Sword HD will be coming to a Nintendo Switch near you. Now, some of you out there have had the pleasure of playing this gem of a game before on the Wii, and the infamous motion control debate aside, I think most players would agree that it was a pretty good Zelda game, all things considered. But the sales numbers tell us that the vast majority of fans of the Legend of Zelda franchise actually did not end up buying and playing the game. And that's even more true today than ever, since Breath of the Wild has single-handedly helped to expand the Zelda fan base multiple times over. However, that means that there's a really good chance that you, watching and listening to my voice right now, may be one of the people who haven't played the game before. In that case, this video is for you. Of course, everyone is still invited to stay and watch, but what I mean by that is in this video, I'm going to go over some very, very key points of Breath of the Wild that were actually either heavily inspired or straight up copied from Skyward Sword that you may or may not have known about. In the first place, we have the one and only Hylia, the goddess/statue/Princess Zelda. By the way, if that last bit shocked you just now, you should totally check out my previous theory on the goddess statues. Anyway, Hylia as a goddess, being, or even just an idea was not present in Zelda lore until the release of Skyward Sword. Not even kidding, for such an immensely important member of Zelda lore, it's interesting to think about the fact that we've only known of her existence since Skyward Sword, so for only the past 10 years. Even though Breath of the Wild is the game that takes place the furthest from Skyward Sword in the timeline, to us the players, it was the game that was released right after. And lo and behold, the goddess Hylia is not only present in the game, but is literally everywhere. You can't go to any town in the game without seeing the physical representation of Skyward Sword's direct inspiration. And what's more is the goddess statues and shrines are even constructed exactly like they were in Skyward Sword. In fact, the entire setting for Breath of the Wild is extremely similar to Skyward Sword's, because as we know, Skyward Sword tells the story of the beginning of the franchise, and if you'll recall, one of the first things you hear in Breath of the Wild is that the Great Plateau is the birthplace of all of Hyrule. But I'm getting carried away with this at this point. If you'd like a more in-depth look at the comparison between the related areas of the two games, I recommend this video by RMFH. And hey, tell him I sent you. Secondly, the Talking Master Sword was also taken directly from Skyward Sword. You see, the Master Sword has for a long time been theorized as having some sort of sentience to it, as in Twilight Princess for instance, Midna states that the sword chose Link as its master, instead of Link choosing the sword. Interesting choice of words that for a long time was unresolved and left up to speculations. Until Skyward Sword, that is. If you haven't played it, you might not have heard of the individual in the game whose name I still cannot get a straight answer on how it's pronounced. Wow, I can literally hear you typing out her pronunciation in the comments below. You guys are funny. Fi, or Fi as some call her, is revealed in Skyward Sword to be the sentience in the Goddess Sword, which later on becomes the one and only Master Sword. Well, unless there's actually 2 of them, but anyway, she serves as Link's companion throughout his adventure and lets him know every time the batteries in his Wiimote are running low. Yeah, anyway, the point is that Fi is a being that lives inside of the Master Sword and for all intents and purposes actually is the Master Sword. In Breath of the Wild, we see the Master Sword speaking to Zelda. While this is already enough to point towards a Skyward Sword inspiration, the developers took it one step further and actually put the same little musical tone in the game that plays whenever Fi speaks to you in Skyward Sword. Take a listen.
The sword. So he can...
Yup, there you have it, the second straight up 100% bona fide Skyward Swordism. Thirdly, and most obviously, parkour. And stamina. But let's face it, mostly parkour.
Parkour!
You see, one of the most groundbreaking things about Breath of the Wild that separates it from other open world games is the fact that Link here can literally climb anything, except for smooth surfaces apparently, but for some reason I find that one difficult to explain, since while he can't climb the surfaces of Sheikah shrines, he can instead climb the completely smooth walls of Gerudo Town. Either way, Link's parkour initiatives originated in Skyward Sword, where he could sprint at a wall and take a solid 2 steps directly upwards like this was Legend of Assassins Skyward Creed. This was the first time in any Zelda game where you were able to even slightly parkour, much less sprint as Link. And the longer you sprinted or did anything requiring physical exertion, the more stamina you used. And thus Nintendo invented the wheel. The stamina wheel. Look familiar? Because it basically functions the exact same way in Breath of the Wild. You sprint or climb or even hit hard and you spend stamina. Now, one thing that Breath of the Wild improved upon was the fact that you could actually level up your stamina wheel by way of the spirit orbs gained from shrines. Either way though, it's interesting to think back upon the fact that we can literally see the roots of this very key and well-known in-game mechanic. Fourthly, crafting. Now this is an in-game mechanic that's super popular in the open world genre already, but in terms of Breath of the Wild, it was completely absent from Zelda games until Skyward Sword. In the game, crafting was used to upgrade your equipment and gear at the gear shop in the bazaar, and even craft things like potions at the potion shop. In Breath of the Wild, this concept evolved into 3 things: cooking, the Great Fairies, and the Sheikah Scientist duo. Cooking, of course, covers the creation of potions and elixirs like the previous game, but also most obviously had the added ability to create, cooked food. The Great Fairies replaced the old bazaar upgrades by allowing you to gather materials and enhance the armor you wear. And Pura/Robbie will either upgrade your runes, which replace tools, or craft gear from the Sheikah materials. One thing that Breath of the Wild did not change from Skyward Sword's crafting is the fact that Link can't just up and craft something by himself. Similar to the shopkeepers in the bazaar, Link still needs to go visit the Sheikah duo, the Great Fairies, or a pod over an open flame to craft whatever his heart's desire. Fifthly, and most importantly, the sailcloth. I mean paraglider. The paracloth was a concept taken directly from Skyward Sword, since one of the main aspects of the game is quite literally falling from the sky. It's a pretty decent death-preventing measure to take when doing such an action. Mr. Aonuma specifically mentioned this in the previous Nintendo Direct when he was talking about Breath of the Wild's Skyward Sword inspirations as well. They did improve the sail glider's functionality by allowing Link to glide with it instead of just fall slowly, but the fact remains that the concept of gliding to reach areas previously unreachable 100% came from Skyward Sword. And that's the list. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope that if you haven't played the game before or in a while, you found this interesting. Let me know if you learned something new or if I forgot something in the comments below. Please be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed the video so that this gets spread around to others and helps hype up Skyward Sword's release. Also, subscribe if you haven't already for much more Nintendo content to come. As always, huge thanks to my amazing supporters who are literally the people that make all of this possible. Please give a huge welcome to a new Bandit level supporter of mine, the Skull Kid Nico, and the 2 new faces of X Superfish and Not So Heroic Link, who have all decided to join my elite Bandit crew. Thank you guys so much, and if you watching are interested in joining said crew and helping the next videos come to life, please feel free to check out that join button located below or find the link to my Patreon in the description below. Also down there is a link to my merch website where I've just gone live with some truly snazzy new Bandit coin or Boin related merch. Even if you can't support monthly, you can still join the Bandit crew by picking up just one of these cute little merch items. And trust me, it is so incredibly appreciated. That's all I've got for you in this one, so as always, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. This is maskednintendobandit signing out. Peace!